Hey everyone, welcome. We're doing something really interesting today, diving into India's future and a book that doesn't hold back. Breaking Free of Nehru.
Definitely provocative. It's going
Fair.
to be great to unpack the core arguments for you.
So the title itself, Breaking Free of Nehru, kind of makes you wonder, breaking free from what? Like, why does it even matter?
Right. It's the heart of it all, really.
Yeah.
The author challenges what he sees as the lingering effects of Nehru's policies, the socialist ones, thinks they're still holding India back from what it could be.
And the person saying this, Sanjeev Sabhlok, he's not just some, armchair critic. 18 years in the IAS, that's the Indian Administrative Service. Talk about seeing how the sausage gets made.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is he's not just, like, objectively critiquing it, right? This was a huge personal and intellectual shift for him, too.
So his story, it kind of runs parallel to the book's journey. Yeah.
100%. He talks about this aha moment, a turning point. Working himself ragged, 16-hour days trying to make the system work, ended up with RSI, like really bad repetitive strain injury.
Ow. Yeah, that'll make you rethink things.
No kidding. Forced him to reevaluate, realize the inefficiency, the corruption. It was deeper than he thought. Not about small fixes anymore. The whole thing needed a rethink.
So he leaves this amazing career, gets his doctorate in economics, like saying, I'm not just going to complain, I'm going to figure this out.
You got it. And that urgency, it's all over the book. Not for academics, he's talking straight to you, the reader, like, wake up, let's rethink India's future.
And he puts it all under this idea of freedom, but says India has a freedom deficit, which, for a democracy, might surprise some people.
Right. And he's not just talking voting rights, it's deeper than that. He looks at India since independence compared to the West, how things like the Magna Carta, they shifted things towards individual liberty, something he feels India missed out on.
Like, it's not enough to just have the vote. There's got to be this culture of questioning, of being open, of individuals taking charge.
Exactly. And he has these three things he uses to, like, measure a society's freedom level: economic wealth, a culture of freedom, and innovation.
And these aren't just random categories, right? They're all kind of feeding into each other for him.
Completely. He says real freedom unleashes the economy, which then grows this culture where people value individual expression, new ideas, the whole shebang.
But then he throws a curveball, brings up this stat about India's average IQ being lower than the global average. Doesn't say it's the Cau-U-Z, but hints that this lack of freedom could it be affecting how people's minds develop over time.
Yeah, that got people talking. Kind of controversial. But even without the IQ part, his big question is, why does India, with all its talent, its resources, why is it still struggling? Is it this lack of real freedom holding it back?
It makes you think, right? And speaking of things that make you think, he tackles this idea of how a free society actually works because there are a lot of misunderstandings about that.
Totally. Like, it's not just everyone doing whatever they want in chaos, right?
Exactly. So how does he explain it?
He dives into the invisible hand, this classic economic idea. Basically, when everyone acts in their own self-interest but within the rules, it actually benefits everyone. Ever think about how your phone is like a perfect example of the free market?
I'll be honest, not really.
But it's true. All those individual decisions, from mining the materials to the software engineers, all acting in their own self-interest. Right. But it creates something amazing that benefits society.
Like this crazy dance of innovation, all guided by the invisible hand.
Exactly. Of course, then there's the question of, well, what about people cheating the system? And that's where Sabhlok brings in the importance of morals.
Okay, so not just economic freedom, but ethical responsibility as well.
100%. He's clear that cheating, pollution, that's not the free market failing, it's ethics failing. A free society needs ways to keep people accountable.
It's not freedom or responsibility, it's both.
Yeah. He wants people to be empowered, but also own the consequences of their choices, good or bad. Freedom that lifts you up and keeps you in check.
So where does government fit in all this? Does it just disappear?
Not at all. He believes in a limited government, but it's still crucial. Not anarchy, but a government focused on justice, protecting individual rights, enforcing contracts, the things that let a free society actually work.
So not fixing everything, but creating an even playing field.
Right. And he goes after these common reasons for government stepping in. Monopolies, he says most, are actually made or protected by governments, not the free market itself.
He also tackles this idea of equality, which is often used to justify more socialist policies.
He says while equal opportunity is key for a free society, this whole chasing after equal outcomes can actually be, like, counterproductive.
He makes this analogy with football, saying if you want everyone to be equal in a football match, then the fastest player's got to run slower, The skilled ones gotta miss shots on purpose,
Yeah.
and that defeats the point, right?
Exactly. Forcing economic equality can kill innovation, make hard work seem pointless. Everyone ends up worse off.
Like he's saying, make sure everyone has a fair shot to play the game and succeed based on what they bring, not by artificially making everyone the same.
Right. And it goes back to justice. True justice, for him, is rewarding people for the value they create, not forcing some artificial equality.
And that leads us to another bold claim. India's constitution, he actually sees it as an obstacle to freedom. Now, that's going to ruffle some feathers.
He doesn't mince words, that's for sure. He calls it a khichdi. It's this Indian dish with rice, lentils, vegetables all mixed up.
Okay, I'm listening. What does that have to do with the constitution?
He's saying it's like a badly made khichdi. India's constitution is this jumble of ideas, some contradicting each other, like a stew where everything's lost its distinct flavor.
Not ideal for a social contract.
Exactly. Too complex, too rigid. And it doesn't put individual liberty front and center. He even says India needs a new constitution, something shorter, clearer, truly focused on freedom.
Wow, that's a bold move right there. But he's not just tearing it down, is he? He's offering alternatives.
Oh, absolutely. He lays out what he thinks a new social contract should look like, with guiding principles and everything.
What are some of those principles?
Big one is minimal government, especially in people's personal lives. Marriage laws, for example. He says individuals should decide who they marry and how they practice their religion without the government butting in.
And that extends to religious freedom, which can be a touchy subject. How does he approach that?
He's all about freedom of choice, but also says communities need to be willing to reform themselves. True freedom means being able to question and challenge outdated traditions, even within your own community.
That's a tough line to walk, respecting individual choice while pushing for social progress, but he doesn't shy away from those hard conversations.
Absolutely not. He's all about pushing people to think critically and not just accept the way things are. And that leads us to another big part of the book, his critique of how politics and the bureaucracy work in India. He's especially critical of how corruption is just, like, baked into the system.
He tells the story kind of funny in a dark way about this guy, Mr. Harish Chandra. Totally honest guy, tries to get into politics and gets absolutely crushed.
It's funny, but also makes a serious point. The way Indian politics works, he says it actually encourages corruption.
So not just a few bad apples, it's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. He compares it to, say, Australia, where politicians get paid way more and elections are funded by the state. In India, he says, honest people often can't even afford to run for office because they're up against people with tons of dirty money.
So what's the solution? Pay politicians more. That seems counterintuitive.
Right, but his argument is if you pay politicians a good salary and take away the need for them to hustle for campaign cash, you're basically incentivizing integrity. You attract better people, reward honesty.
So aligning incentives, basically. Make being honest the smartest move.
Exactly. And this applies to the bureaucracy, too. He says it's all inefficient, no accountability, rewards mediocrity. Again, compares it to Australia, where performance is measured, results matter, they're always trying to improve.
So it's about how the whole system is set up.
Right. And it directly affects how well the government works, how well it serves its people. But don't worry, he's got a plan. A whole 5-year plan to transform India's governance. Super ambitious.
Okay, lay it on us. What's his big idea?
Oh, it's ambitious, all right. Some might even say a little out there. But that's what makes it so interesting, you know. He's not afraid to swing for the fences.
So give us the rundown. What's in this radical plan?
Well, he talks about things like education vouchers, giving parents more control over where their kids go to school, no matter their background, and a negative income tax. So basically, everyone gets a basic income, a safety net.
Sounds like it's all about putting power in the hands of individuals.
Exactly. Less top-down bureaucracy, more trusting people to make their own choices. Oh, and he also wants to dismantle those huge municipalities, give more power back to smaller local governments.
So more decentralized, closer to the people. The idea being that makes things more accountable, more responsive.
That's the gist. Smaller governments, they're more in touch with what people actually need, less likely to get bogged down in corruption. You know,
It's a huge shift, like rebuilding the system from the ground up. But can it even be done? There have got to be people saying it's too much, too fast.
oh, definitely. Some say it's totally unrealistic, given how complex India's political scene is. But Sabhlok, he thrives on a challenge. He knows it's difficult, but he insists change is possible. And it starts with each person questioning, thinking for themselves, and demanding better from their leaders.
That's the through line, isn't it? That call to action. He doesn't want you to just agree. He wants you to go do something.
100%. He wants people to shape their own future, not wait for the government to hand it to them. Reminds us we're not just along for the ride. We have the power to make things better, hold our leaders accountable, build a society that reflects what we believe in.
And that circles back to freedom, doesn't it? Not just the concept, but actually living it, taking responsibility for it.
Right. True freedom. It's not a gift. It's something you earn by participating, by demanding accountability, by never stopping questioning, striving for better.
Freedom's not a destination, it's a journey. Something like that.
Exactly. And you got to stay vigilant on that journey, think critically, challenge the status quo.
Powerful stuff, especially thinking about where India's headed. So for you, someone interested in India's potential, its challenges, what does this idea of freedom with responsibility, how does that hit you?
Does it get you fired up?
Yeah.
Make you uncomfortable? Does it make you want to roll up your sleeves and get involved in building that future?
It's like we can complain about the system all day, but he's saying, look, what are you doing to make it better? That really stuck with me.
Yeah, owning it, right? Freedom isn't just demanding your rights. It's also about taking responsibility. And that's where he leaves us with this really interesting thought. True freedom has to have personal accountability woven into it.
So not just, I'm free to do whatever, but also, and I'll own the consequences, good or bad, for me and everyone else.
Exactly. It's both, right? You're empowered to make your own choices, but you're also obligated to deal with what comes from those choices. Liberating and demanding at the same time.
Makes you think about freedom differently, not just breaking free from things, but what you do with that freedom to build a good society.
And that's what makes his work so powerful. It's not just theory, it's a kick in the pants. Stop complaining. Become the change you want to see.
Each of us has a part to play, even if it's small.
Absolutely. And it starts by questioning everything, actually talking about these things, holding ourselves, ADR leaders accountable. We got to build a society that actually reflects those values. Freedom, fairness, letting people thrive.
So we're at the end of this deep dive into breaking free of Nehru, and it feels like we're left with this question hanging in the air. What does real freedom mean to you in your life and India's future?
What does it look like when you embrace the good parts of freedom, ADD, the responsibility that comes with it?
It gives you something to chew on, that's for sure.
It does, and hopefully get some more conversation started, some action.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.